Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're diving into an explosive moment that left everyone stunned and the room frozen in disbelief. Elon Musk, the man who never shies away from controversy, drops a bombshell about Judge Edward Chen, something so shocking that it has the potential to shake the very foundations of the legal world. What happens when a tech mogul with a reputation for disruption takes aim at a powerful figure in the judicial system? This is the story of an unforgettable revelation, one that no one saw coming. Make sure to like and subscribe for more high-stakes moments, and hit the bell so you never miss a story that might just change everything. The atmosphere in the courtroom was tense, the kind of tension that only builds when something monumental is about to unfold. The usual hum of chatter had died down, leaving a quiet anticipation hanging in the air. The crowd, composed of journalists, legal experts, and a few curious onlookers, was already on edge. This was no ordinary hearing, and everyone knew it. Today, Elon Musk was set to testify, and if anyone knew how to captivate an audience, it was him. Musk was seated at the witness stand, his usual calm demeanor in place, though there was something more intense in his gaze. He had a reputation for speaking his mind, for revealing truths that others dared not utter, but even his most loyal followers could feel that something was different today. Something was brewing. Judge Edward Chen, a respected figure in the legal world, was presiding over the case. His reputation for fairness was almost legendary, but his recent decisions had come under scrutiny, especially from Musk, who had never been one to hold back. It was clear from the outset that this wasn't just another legal battle. It was a clash of ideologies, of power, and of influence. Musk, the tech billionaire who had changed the world with his innovations, was about to take on one of the most influential figures in the judiciary. "Mr. Musk," Judge Chen's voice rang out, calm but with a hint of authority. "I trust you're prepared to answer the questions that have been posed to you?" Musk nodded, but there was a fire in his eyes, a flicker of something that suggested he wasn't just there to respond to questions, he was there to make a statement. The moment hung in the air, charged with energy. The room was silent, all eyes fixed on Musk. He leaned forward slightly, his fingers tapping the surface of the stand as he prepared to speak. What was he about to say? What could possibly justify the tension building in the room? Then, without any warning, Musk dropped the bombshell. "Judge Chen," he began, his voice measured but filled with purpose, "there's something about your recent rulings that I think the public needs to know." A wave of confusion rippled through the courtroom. Musk wasn't just challenging the judge's decisions, he was hinting at something far deeper, something much more sinister. The audience, already on edge, leaned in closer, waiting for the next words to follow. "What I'm about to reveal," Musk continued, his gaze never wavering from Judge Chen, "is information that has been carefully kept from the public for too long. It's time the world knew the truth." Musk paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. Was this another one of his grand gestures, or was he truly about to expose something shocking? The tension was palpable, and for the first time that day, even Judge Chen seemed caught off guard. His usual composure faltered for just a fraction of a second, enough for Musk to notice. "You see, Judge," Musk said slowly, "I've done some digging, and what I've uncovered about your connections to certain political figures is not something that should be ignored. It's not just a conflict of interest. It's something far more dangerous." A murmur of disbelief spread through the room. Some of the journalists exchanged confused glances, unsure of whether to believe what they were hearing. Could it be true? Could Musk, someone who was often the subject of his own fair share of controversy, actually have evidence that could tarnish the reputation of someone like Judge Edward Chen? Judge Chen's face remained stoic, but the faintest trace of unease crossed his features. For the first time in this entire legal proceeding, he looked vulnerable. And that was all it took. The room, which had been so still just moments before, was now buzzing with a mixture of shock and curiosity. Was Elon Musk about to expose something that could take down a powerful figure in the legal system? The thought lingered in the air, heavy with the anticipation of what would come next. The stakes were higher than ever before, and the revelation Musk had just hinted at was enough to leave anyone wondering, what secrets was Judge Edward Chen hiding? The room remained eerily silent, as if time itself had frozen. The words Musk had just spoken hung in the air, heavy and unshakable. No one knew how to respond. It wasn't just the words themselves, but the implication that the tech mogul had uncovered something about Judge Edward Chen, something far darker than anyone could have imagined. Musk wasn't finished, though. He leaned back in his chair, allowing the room to stew in the tension he had created. He could feel the eyes of every person in the room drilling into him, their thoughts racing. He wasn't just trying to stir up a media storm. He was going for something bigger, something more significant. But what? What could possibly lie behind those carefully chosen words? Judge Chen, who had been calm and collected moments before, now appeared uneasy. His hands rested on the desk in front of him, gripping the edges tightly. The color in his face had shifted slightly, and for the first time in the proceedings, he seemed genuinely rattled. But he quickly regained his composure, the mask of authority, slipping back into place. "Mr. Musk," Judge Chen's voice came, steady but tinged with a warning. "Are you suggesting that my rulings are influenced by outside forces?" Musk met his gaze, his expression one of cool defiance. "I'm not suggesting anything, Judge. I'm stating facts." His voice was unwavering, each word punctuated, with a confidence that made his claim all the more unsettling. The room collectively held its breath. The journalists scribbled frantically, desperate to catch every word. The weight of what was happening was undeniable. This wasn't just a courtroom drama. This was something that could reverberate far beyond the walls of this building. "Let's be clear," Musk continued, his voice now rising with a touch of passion. "There are powerful people in this world, people who can influence judges, sway decisions, and use the system for their own benefit. And from where I'm sitting, it seems Judge Edward Chen has been more than a little friendly with some of those people." Chen's expression remained neutral, but his jaw tightened, imperceptibly. This wasn't the reaction he had expected. Musk had always been bold, but this was different. This wasn't just a personal attack on Chen's credibility. It was an accusation that could tear apart the carefully constructed image the judge had spent decades building. The room seemed to shrink as the tension escalated. There was a palpable sense of disbelief. How was it possible that Musk, the billionaire entrepreneur known for his ventures in space and electric cars, could be making such a serious accusation? Was he truly in possession of evidence? Or was this just another one of Musk's high-profile stunts designed to dominate headlines? Musk took a deep breath and continued, undeterred by the mounting tension. "I have documents, communications, connections, things that go beyond public knowledge. But more than that, I've spoken with people who have seen the truth firsthand." A murmur ran through the room as if a collective gasp had been stifled. Some of the journalists exchanged knowing looks, while others were clearly skeptical. But no one dared interrupt Musk. Whatever he was about to reveal could change everything. "And you're saying," a reporter finally spoke up, her voice shaky but determined, "that Judge Chen has been in contact with these figures, and that these connections have influenced his decisions?" Musk turned to the reporter, his eyes gleaming with certainty. "That's exactly what I'm saying. But it's not just about influence. It's about something far more dangerous, a pattern of corruption that runs deep. I have no doubt in my mind that Judge Chen has been compromised." The room seemed to vibrate with the weight of Musk's words. The shockwaves from his revelation were starting to ripple outwards, and it was clear that no one, not even the judge, knew how to handle the fallout. For a moment, the entire world seemed to be watching. The question on everyone's mind was simple. Would anyone believe Musk? Or was this all an elaborate scheme designed to take down a powerful judge? Judge Chen's voice broke through the silence once again, though this time there was no denying the cold edge in his tone. Mr. Musk, if you're going to make such serious accusations, I expect you to provide evidence. Otherwise, I'll have no choice but to hold you in contempt of court. But Musk was undeterred. Oh, I'll provide the evidence. You'll see it soon enough. But mark my words, Judge, once the public sees what I have, your career will be over. The courtroom was on the edge of chaos, but it had not yet fully erupted. The bombshell had been dropped, and now the questions began to form in the minds of everyone present. Could Musk be telling the truth? Or was he simply playing a dangerous game of character assassination? Either way, it was clear that whatever came next would shake the legal world to its core. The atmosphere in the room was now electric with uncertainty, like the calm before a storm. Every reporter's camera was trained on Musk, ready to capture any sign of weakness, any hint that he might backtrack. But Musk remained steady, unwavering, in his conviction. He had just set off a wildfire, and now there was no turning back. But Judge Chen wasn't backing down either. His face was hard, his eyes narrowed in a mix of calculation and anger. He knew the stakes now. This wasn't just about his reputation as a judge. This was about his career, his life. If Musk had the proof he claimed to possess, then everything could come crashing down. He had spent years building his credibility in the legal world, but in an instant, it could all be undone. So you're accusing me of corruption? Chen's voice was cold, sharp, but there was a tremor beneath the surface, something Musk didn't miss. And you expect me to just sit here while you make these baseless allegations? Musk tilted his head slightly, his gaze never leaving the judge. Baseless? He repeated, the word dripping with disbelief. No, Judge. What I'm saying is that there's a system at play here. A system that's much bigger than you. I'm not accusing you of a few missteps. I'm accusing you of being part of something that's been operating in the shadows for far too long. Chen's nostrils flared, and his knuckles whitened as he clenched his hands on the table. He could feel the heat rising in his chest, his pulse quickening. He had faced pressure before, faced cases that tested his limits. But this was different. This was a personal attack, a direct challenge to his integrity. And worse, it was coming from one of the most influential figures in the world. The room was silent again, the tension palpable. It wasn't just Musk's words, it was the certainty behind them, the way he spoke as though he knew something no one else did. How had he come to possess such damning information? Who were these people Musk had referenced? And why, after all this time, was he speaking out now? A voice broke through the stillness, a voice that no one had expected to hear. It was one of the court clerks, a woman who had been quietly observing the proceedings from the back of the room. She had been scribbling notes, her face etched with concern. But now she spoke up, her words soft but filled with an undeniable urgency. Elon, you can't just accuse a judge of corruption without proof. People will think I'm what? Musk interrupted, his voice sharp but not unkind. He turned toward the woman, his expression softening for a moment. Think I'm crazy? Think I'm lying? The woman faltered, not expecting Musk to address her directly. Her eyes shifted nervously toward the judge, who was watching the exchange with growing intensity. I didn't mean— I know what you meant, Musk said, cutting her off again. And I get it. This isn't easy to believe. But the truth is there are people who are more powerful than any judge in this room. And if you think they aren't pulling the strings behind the scenes, you're delusional. I've seen it. I've been on the receiving end of it. The room was on edge now. Musk wasn't just talking about corruption. He was speaking of something far darker. The undercurrent of power, of influence, that ran through the very veins of the legal and political system. His words were starting to sink in, and the reality of what he was suggesting was dawning on everyone present. Judge Chen's composure began to crack. The first signs of unease were clear now. His jaw clenched tighter, his hands trembling ever so slightly. Musk had struck a chord, and it was clear the judge didn't know how to respond. "You don't know what you're dealing with, Musk," Chen finally spoke, his voice low and threatening. "You're playing a dangerous game. You don't have the slightest idea of the forces you're challenging." "Oh, I know exactly what I'm dealing with," Musk shot back. "And I know I'm not alone in this. I have allies, people who want to see this corruption exposed. And soon, you won't be able to hide anymore." The room grew even more charged as Musk's words sank in. The reporters, the legal experts, the onlookers, they were all processing what had just been said. This wasn't just about one man or one judge. This was about a system of power, a web of influence that stretched far beyond the courtroom. If Musk's claims were true, it would send shockwaves through the entire legal system. Judge Chen, for all his authority, was now caught in the spotlight, his career hanging by a thread. He had underestimated Musk's resolve, and now he was facing the consequences of that mistake. The crowd watched, breathless, as the battle of wills between Musk and Chen continued to unfold. And yet Musk wasn't finished. Far from it. There was more to be revealed, more bombs to be dropped. The revelation about Chen was only the beginning. He had set the stage for something much bigger, and now it was clear. The world would never be the same again. The tension in the room was unbearable. It felt as if the very air had thickened, each breath becoming harder to take. Every eye was trained on Musk, waiting for his next move, for the next revelation that would change the entire course of the conversation. The weight of his words hung heavily in the air, a silent challenge thrown squarely in the face of Judge Edward Chen. And Musk wasn't done. No, this was just the beginning. He wasn't just going to walk away after stirring the pot. He had planted the seed, but now he was ready to water it, to let it grow into something far more dangerous than anyone in that room had anticipated. "I'm not just talking about one judge," Musk began again, his voice now filled with an ominous certainty. "I'm talking about a system, a structure that's been built over decades. You think this is isolated? You think it's just me and you, Judge? You're wrong." The reporters exchanged nervous glances. What was he getting at now? Where was this all leading? "I'm talking about power," Musk continued, his voice steady, almost chilling. "I'm talking about the kind of power that doesn't just shape the courtroom, it shapes the entire world. The kind of power that bends laws, that turns blind eyes to injustice, that hides behind the legal system and uses it for its own purposes. And make no mistake, Judge, you're a part of that power. You've been a part of it for years." The room seemed to collectively hold its breath. Musk's words weren't just accusations anymore. They were a damning critique of an entire system. The implication was clear. Musk wasn't just targeting one corrupt individual, he was attacking a larger, more sinister force. And that force had the power to destroy anyone who dared to challenge it. Judge Chen, however, wasn't backing down. His pride, his reputation, everything he had worked for, was on the line. His voice came out low and controlled. But there was a crack in it, a sign that the cracks in his armor were widening. "You're dangerous, Musk," he said, his words icy. "You think you can just walk in here and tear down everything I've built? You don't understand the consequences of what you're doing." Musk didn't flinch. He was prepared for this moment, for Chen's attempt to threaten him, to intimidate him into silence. But Musk wasn't easily intimidated. Not anymore. He had faced far bigger challenges than this and come out on top. No, this wasn't about fear. This was about exposing the truth. And he wasn't going to let anything stop him. "Consequences?" Musk repeated, his voice rising slightly. "What consequences, Judge? The consequences for you, or the consequences for the truth? Because, let me tell you, The truth always comes out. And you can't hide from it forever. Sooner or later, the world will see what's really going on behind those closed doors. Musk's words echoed in the room, and for a moment even Judge Chen seemed to falter. The room had gone eerily quiet. It was as if the universe itself had paused to take in what Musk had just said. But then, from the back of the room, a voice broke the silence. It was one of the younger reporters, his voice tentative but rising with conviction. "What do you mean by that? Who else is involved in this? Who's behind all of this?" Musk's eyes locked on the reporter, a glint of something dangerous flashing across his face. He had been waiting for this question. It was the question everyone in the room wanted to ask but was too afraid to. Musk leaned forward slightly, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Not just anyone," he said, the weight of his words hanging in the air. "I'm talking about the people at the top, the ones who pull the strings. They think they can get away with anything. They think they're untouchable, but they're not." The reporter's pen hovered above his notepad, frozen in anticipation. The entire room was on edge, waiting for the next piece of the puzzle to fall into place. But Musk didn't speak again. Not yet. He had given them enough to chew on. Enough to make them question everything they thought they knew about the system they had trusted. Chen, for his part, had gone completely still. His face had drained of color, the reality of the situation sinking in. He had been prepared to defend himself, to discredit Musk and dismiss him as another conspiracy theorist. But Musk had backed him into a corner, forcing him to confront something far bigger than he had anticipated. "You can't just keep talking like this, Musk," Chen finally said, his voice tight, barely above a whisper. "You're playing with fire, and you're going to get burned." Musk didn't respond immediately. He didn't need to. His silence was enough. The message had been sent, and now the only thing left to do was wait for the fallout. And the fallout was coming. There was no doubt about that. As the room waited for the next move, everyone knew one thing for certain. The game had changed. The stakes had just been raised higher than anyone had ever imagined. And from this moment on, nothing would ever be the same again. The room was now a pressure cooker, the heat and tension growing with each passing second. The whispers, the glances, the barely contained anxiety, it all swirled around the table like a storm just before it broke. And then, just as the storm seemed poised to erupt, Elon Musk did something unexpected. He leaned back in his chair, a subtle smile creeping across his face. It wasn't the smile of a man who had just made an outrageous accusation. No, this was the smile of a man who knew he had just won. "Everyone's so focused on the details," Musk said, almost as if to himself, his voice low and deliberate. "But no one's asking the real question. No one's asking why this system exists in the first place. Why do people like you, Judge, get away with this for so long? What does this really say about the state of our courts, our country?" It wasn't just a rhetorical question. It was an indictment, a challenge. Musk had already delivered the bombshell, but now he was trying to shift the narrative. He wasn't interested in just exposing one judge. He wasn't even interested in just exposing corruption. He was aiming for something much bigger, a revolution of thought, a call to action that would ripple through the entire system. And for a moment it looked as if the room was ready to follow him. Judge Edward Chen, who had once been the picture of confidence, was now visibly sweating. His attempts to regain control of the situation were falling flat. The mask of authority he had worn for so many years had cracked, and what lay beneath it was nothing but panic. He wasn't in control anymore, and that realization hit him harder than any of Musk's accusations ever could. "You think you can change everything just by saying a few words?" Chen spat, his voice trembling. He was losing his composure. His carefully crafted image was crumbling piece by piece. "This isn't a game, Musk. You don't get to just walk in here and dismantle everything I've worked for. I've been a judge for years. I know how this works." Musk didn't flinch. He didn't need to. His words had already done the damage. "You're right, Judge. You've been a judge for years. And that's exactly why you should have known better. The system has been broken for so long that you've come to believe it's unbreakable. But it's not. Everything can be dismantled. Everything can be fixed." The weight of his words hung in the air like a thick fog, and for a long moment no one spoke. The silence was deafening, as if the entire room was frozen in time, waiting for something, anything, to break it. But it was clear now. The game had changed. The world was watching, and this moment would be remembered for a long time. Finally, one of the reporters, his voice barely a whisper, dared to ask the question on everyone's mind. "What now, Musk? What happens next?" Musk's eyes flashed with a mixture of determination and something far darker. "What happens next?" he echoed, the corners of his mouth curving upward slightly. "We change the system. We expose the truth. And we make sure that people like Judge Chen don't get away with it anymore." It wasn't a threat. It wasn't an empty promise. It was a declaration. And with that, the tension broke. It was as if a dam had been released and the floodgates of possibility had opened. No one in that room would ever forget what they had just witnessed. The world had just been introduced to a new kind of fight. A fight not just against one man, but against an entire system that had been allowed to thrive unchecked for far too long. As the cameras clicked and reporters scrambled to process what had just happened, Musk stood up from his seat, his expression resolute. He didn't need to say anything more. The message had been sent. The revolution had begun. Judge Chen, for his part, remained seated, his face pale and drawn. The reality of the situation was settling in, and it was clear he knew his days of unchallenged authority were over. He had been exposed, his power stripped away in front of the world. The consequences of his actions, and the actions of others like him, would now be felt far and wide. Musk, on the other hand, walked out of the room with the same quiet confidence he had entered with. He had done what he came to do, and now the world would bear witness to the aftermath. What started as a single bombshell had now become a full-scale reckoning, and the world, as it turned out, was ready for it.